Okay, so yeah, so let's get going. So thanks for joining us today, Kelly and Janet. We're so excited to have you. We are thrilled to also have AJ joining us today, who's one of our Let's Detroit ambassadors with the Let's Detroit initiative. We're going to learn a little bit more about her work and and what she does and all the things that she cares about and all the ways that you can get involved with her work. My name's Catherine. I'm the engagement manager with Let's Detroit. Obviously, I know you all, so just glad to see some familiar faces. And Let's Detroit is the Detroit Regional Chamber's initiative to retain and attract talent in Southeast Michigan. And we are doing that by aggregating all things live, work, play, and volunteer in Southeast Michigan, but through the eyes of young professionals and college students who are choosing to build their careers here. So all the content that you'll see on letsdetroit.com is all written by and for young professionals and college students in the region. So want to keep encouraging you to engage with that. This is a little bit on the screen today, is a little bit kind of our flow for today. I'm going to do show you a little brief overview of Let's Detroit, but then hand it over to AJ so we can get started with her. And then we have my PowerPoint slide that I'll share in a follow-up email that has all of the relevant links of how to stay connected with everyone, with Let's Detroit and with AJ. And then some upcoming events and other information as well. So you'll have a copy of these slides at the end. So with that, you'll see I did this little, I just wanted to invite you to join us on letsdetroit.com if you haven't already visited our website recently, and our social media pages. But this is just a little diagram to show you kind of where we fit in with the Chamber's education and talent initiatives. So obviously the Chamber is focused on promoting business and economic development, but we know obviously one of the ways to make that stronger is investing in talent. And we are working to keep more talent here and getting people to and through the sort of credentials and programs that they want to get through to gain those skills. And so that's another reason why we're excited to have AJ with us today to share her work, because her work is really important on that talent development side and leadership development and professional development skills. So we're really excited to have her for that. As I mentioned, AJ is one of our ambassadors with our regional ambassador network. So we have a variety of different ambassadors that are talking about where they work, where they live, the things that they do outside of work and school, and how to get involved in all those different things. So you can find all of those different types of ambassadors on our website, or you can use our texting platform to get kind of directed to some of those things on our website too. So we have a bunch of texting ambassadors answering those questions on the back end. So I'm going to just take some notes in this too, and I'm going to share this slide deck with you in the chat and then after our presentation today. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it over to AJ. AJ and I met through one of our other Let's Detroit ambassadors, Ashley Williams, connected us originally. So again, another reason why we love our ambassador network for all the different connections that are made. And we just want to encourage everyone to keep using that as a resource for your own networking and getting connected to different things. So AJ, I think I will pass it on to you. We'll share, I know you have a lot of great information to share about your background and your business and what you're up to. So I'm gonna hand it off to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Catherine. And I'm just so glad to be talking to all of you here, because this is, whether you're watching this, you're here live or you're watching this later, this is a topic that is deeply, deeply important to me. And it's also a need that I see still being unaddressed in the in leadership development spaces across the country, but especially here in Detroit, as we're looking to retain our younger talent, and as we look to kind of keep in mind what younger millennials, Gen Zs, and the next generations, what they really, really want out of their workspaces and out of their community spaces and things like that. And I think all of us know, especially through COVID and the disconnect and everything that's happened, a huge part of the problem is that feeling of invisibility, is that feeling of, who am I? Do I matter? How do I matter? Why do I matter? All of those. And so as you'll hear as we go through the slides, this idea of making your invisible visible to be a better leader, it did come out of my personal journey. And when I went through it, you know, I didn't think too much of it because, you know, it was my personal journey. But as I went through it, that's when I started noticing other people. It wasn't just me. That this was almost like a side effect of the systems and structures that have been built for 450 years, that other than the top, 1% of the population, in so many ways, everybody else was being rendered invisible. And then we were internalizing those messages to render ourselves even more invisible. And so that's where this whole idea of making the invisible visible came out of, to where it is now, since I started my official business, it is my business motto, making the invisible visible for better equity and belongingness. And for me, equity and belongingness, if we have to make that happen, it has to happen through inclusive leadership development, whole person leadership development. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that, so I won't spend too much time on that right now. So before I get into, like the meat of everything we're going to talk about, this whole slide, I was so uncomfortable making it in so many ways, because yes, it sounds super braggy, but this really, it's even a reminder for me and for all of us that no matter where we are in life, no matter where we are in our leadership development or our trajectory, we're conditioned to think that something like this is boastful or braggy. I want to reframe that entire thing for you today and say, what you see on that slide right in front of you is how all of this stuff, wrong hand, all of this stuff is how, as I've grown and become more visible, the impact I'm able to have has exponentially increased. The service I'm able to provide has gotten exponentially better in quality and quantity. So everything you see on this slide here is literally who am I since COVID to now. I didn't even put the rest of it up there. And it's as I made my invisible visible to myself, and as I reclaimed that power that I thought I never had, but as it turns out, I did. It was just buried, and I was just leaking it out because I was letting other people dictate that. As I reclaimed all of that, and then channeled all of that energy into power in my own strategic ways, I ended up being Core Magazine's 2020 Diverse Business Leader Awardee. I'm on Brain's 500 Global, which is the top 500 global thought leaders in the world. And I'm on that list with Jay Shetty and Simon Sinek, which blows my mind. I was able to start the C3EB Summit, which I invite all of you to next week. It's called Culturally Competent Conversations for Equity and Belongingness. And so you'll get to hear from historically marginalized people who have the lived insights, who have the lived experiences, so that we can all learn about equity and belongingness and inclusion and do right by it. So that we don't have to do the easy thing, we can do the right thing. right? I became an advanced certified practitioner. I recently got on a magazine cover with Brains Magazine, my first magazine cover, which Janet sent me a bunch of lovely emojis for earlier today. And then this is something I didn't even get a chance to put on this slide, but I found out last night. I am in the top 20. I'm number 14 in the top 20 career and leadership coaches in the entire Metro Detroit area. And again, all of this development, I'm not saying that to talk about the bragging. What we're going to see as we go through this is how you amplify your impact. This is how you amplify your leadership presence. And this is how you amplify yourself as a pillar in the communities that you're a part of. But you can't do that if there are parts of you that are invisible to you. You have to be able to see your whole self, because if you don't, there's no guarantee you're seeing other people as whole human beings. It always starts with you, right? Leadership starts with you leading yourself. So you have to be able to lead yourself, walk that walk, so that you are that role model who automatically, normatively chooses equity and bold, inclusive actions as your service. And it's not an afterthought, or it's not a business case you need to check off. Again, it boils down to it being the right thing to do. Oh, and I'm also a trained social and personality psychologist. I have my doctorate and a whole bunch of those things as well. But, you know, again, all of those go towards impact. So here's what we'll tackle today. I just love this picture. We're gonna talk about what does making your invisible visible even mean? Like, what does it mean? And then we're gonna go into why is that important? And in that why, we're actually gonna look at three things. 1, your personal benefits, 2, professional benefits, and 3, brand benefits. Now, whether that brand is your personal brand as an entrepreneur, or your organization's brand, or your future company that you're dreaming of, its brand, whatever it is, making your invisible visible is how you lean into whole person leadership development. And I'm going to talk about what that means in just a bit. But then we're going to go into what do you need to make visible about yourself? How do you go about doing that? And once you kind of gain that visibility and you see yourself as a whole person, how do you leverage it in your spaces to have the impact you want to have and to have the impact you need to have? And then finally, I'll briefly touch on how I support people in this journey. But my main goal here today is to talk about the rest of this and leave you with some, at least some reflection points or thoughts that you can think about on your own as you think about your leadership journey. So, what does making your invisible visible mean? And this goes back to what I started off with in this the idea that we know that, especially as women, or if we're a member of any sort of historically marginalized population, we know we've been conditioned to think of ourselves as less than, as not enough, as not worthy enough, as not leader enough, whatever labels you want to put on there. And then we internalize those. We make up stories about it, right? So, and we use those as our fears. As, oh my gosh, I can't do that because I'm not good enough. And let's say we do, on the off chance, that one time when we get super courageous and bold, we try something, we fail at it. We immediately, what do? We go, oh, I knew it. Totally knew it. I'm done. I give up. I'm over it. I'm good where I am, because at least this way I'm not failing. So making your invisible visible means really addressing your fears, your strengths, your limiting beliefs, other people's limiting beliefs about you, judgments about you, the stories you tell yourself, and all of that. So that, again, you can see yourself as a whole person. And this whole person is important because I don't care how many jobs you have right now, or how many spaces you're in, how many volunteer positions you're in, how many board positions you're in. I don't care if you wear 8 hats per day or 35 hats per day or 80 hats per day. All of those hats are going on the same head. So why are you focused on the hats? Why aren't you focused on the head that the hats are going on? That's my question there. That's actually what making your invisible visible means, is understanding no matter what roles you play, who are you at your core? Because that's going to determine your behavior. That's going to determine your attitudes. That's going to determine what you stand for, why you want to be a particular kind of leader, how you are perceived depending on the situation you're a part of. When can you have an impact, and where can you affect change? All of that comes back to you making your invisible visible. And I'll give you an example there. So I am a, award-winning DEI consultant. I'm very vocal. If you've seen my live streams, and I'm on video almost every day on social media. I'm in various ways. And I'm talking about diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm talking against systemic racism, against white supremacy. The structures of white supremacy, our institutions, all of these topics that are considered very sensitive, possibly controversial topics. Now, what I mean by making your invisible visible and understanding when and where you can have an impact and how you're perceived and why you're a leader, all of that, I know who I am. I know what I stand for. I know why I'm doing this. It's my purpose. But now let's say I happen to be, this happens to be a group of 40 individuals that I know are Proud Boys somehow. Would I be using the same language with them? Oh gosh, no. Because I know they can find out where I live, and that's a real concern. On the other hand, if I'm talking to, let's say it's a group of just Indian American women who are stay-at-home moms, the stories and examples I would use there would change, right? So our communication style changes in our context, but it always comes back to those first 3 points. Who are you? What do you stand for? And why are you a leader? Based on those, the how, when, and where, those are contextual. So making your invisible visible really means understanding those 6 questions so that even when you're thrown into situations, you can immediately gauge and assess and tailor everything in your words, thoughts, and actions to have the impact you want to have, not the impact they think you're going to have. So it's really about you taking back that control, taking back that energy, and then channeling that into power, as I said, so that when you make that statement, that powerful statement, it's hitting the way you want it to hit, regardless of who else is in the audience. So that actually, when we think about it, that actually boils down to our identity, right? Who are we? Who am I? Who do I think I am? And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, like, who do you think you are? No, who do I actually think I am? So it's interesting because in social psychology, identity is studied a lot, but there's actually 7 different layers to your identity. And when you make yourself your own invisible visible, you get to address all 7 of these layers. So it actually starts off up top over there, and it's going to go in a counterclockwise direction outward. So your innermost, coremost layer is your personal individual identity, right? Your personality quirks. Are you a morning person? Are you a night owl? Are you somebody like me who is not a morning person? And if you talk to me before I finish my first cup of coffee, I'm probably going to growl at you. And that's the best response you're going to get from me. That's legitimately the best I can do before my cup of coffee. Whereas on the other hand, you know, my husband, he wakes up, he throws every curtain open and he's just like so chipper. Then you see him at noon, and at noon is when I'm like starting to get into my energy and I'm like, all right, let's do this. And then you see him at noon and he's just like, is it bedtime yet? You know, those are personal quirks, right? That's your personal individual identity. On top of that, so that's your first innermost layer. Then around that, you have your demographic identity. How you see yourself as, you know, do you see yourself as a cisgender woman, a cisgender man, transgender woman, transgender man, other? Does your ethnicity matter to you? Does your, you know, like heritage, ancestral heritage, is that a part of how you express yourself? Class, all of these other demographics, your socioeconomic status, your educational status. Are you somebody who, you know, like, I know I say Dr. AJ Jeedigunta and everything, but I actually prefer AJ. You know, so that doctor part, it's there to kind of add that extra layer of credibility for those who doubt me, but I don't doubt myself. You know, so that part actually doesn't factor into my personal demographic identity. All of the work I've done in my education does, but not the label. Then there's a cultural identity, the third layer, because culture is not just about your heritage, right? It's about the traits of our society that you practice and want to, that you strive toward, and that you want to transmit to those around you. So that could be music, that could be food, that could be fashion, hobbies, all of those things. My cultural identity was very different when I was living in India and I was 12 years old than me living here and becoming an Indian American, becoming somebody who truly embraced parts of my American identity and parts of my Indian cultural heritage. So that's the third layer. That's all personal stuff. Now on this side, I don't know where I'm pointing, but on where it says in-group and out-group side, that's the outward-facing stuff. That's your interactions with others, right? So there's your personal, and then your in-group is those like you. It could be your inner circle of friends. It could be, like for me, my in-group is all of my parents' Indian American friends, my aunties and uncles and extended family and those who helped raise me. And the out group is sort of the rest of the world. Those are the terms you need to know there. So after your personal identity, you have this in-group facing personal identity. And that is, how do you express yourself when it's with people you like? And how do you express the group? Like, how do you talk about the whole group as a whole internally, right? For instance, again, this is where gossiping comes in, right? And this is where the stereotypes come in. And I don't mind saying this even on a recording. The way I talk about the stereotypes of Indian Americans stereotypically being doctors or engineers with a bunch of Indian Americans is way different than if I knew it was everybody else that I was talking to, because I would never actually make a joke about that when I'm outward facing. But if it's just me and my friends, most of us are doctors, by the way, yeah, we let loose on that. So that's the in-group facing personal identity, and then the group identity, and then out-group facing. What do you know, how do you express yourself to the outside world, and how do you express your group to the outside world? All of these layers come back to making your invisible visible. Do you know yourself in all of these layers? Have you even thought about these layers to you? And all of us have them. Until you do, you don't know, you won't have a strong sense of who you are. I'm not saying you don't know, but you won't have a strong enough sense of who you are to where you can articulate it, especially if it's conflict or controversy. And that's where leadership really comes in, right? And especially when you're trying to inspire and impact. So why is all of this important? Well, on a personal level, when you make your invisibility visible to yourself, when you start seeing yourself as a whole person, you'll actually start seeing that this whole work-life balance thing is a myth. Work is a part of life. They're not two separate planets. You're not getting on a plane and like, switching over. You're not changing avatars like on a video game. It's still you. Even if outwardly, yes, sure, you may dress a little bit more professionally, those clothes are going on the same you, which is actually why I'm wearing this shirt. Actually, my daughter's 4.5. She made a great point about this because I wear this shirt, and she was younger when she made this, and she actually pokes in this shoulder hole and says, "Hey, you have an arm in there." And I said, "Uh-huh." She said, "I didn't realize you had an arm in there. I can see your skin. I can see you." Think about that, right? A toddler expressed it so simply, but this right here, these holes are about making your invisible visible, that it is still you under that suit. It is still you under whatever mask you feel like you need to wear in the moment. And when you make your own invisible visible to yourself, you no longer need to wear that mask, because then you can reclaim that power and stand strong. So that then allows you a whole lot of mental stability. It allows you to manage your imposter syndrome because you know who you are. It allows you to express this confidence because, again, you know who you are, you know what you stand for, you know why you are a leader, why you want to be a leader, when, where you want to make that impact, and all of that. And because of all of that, you have this ability to manage conflict or conflicting situations or any sort of controversies that happen. That's a personal side. And of course, as the dude down there in that picture showing, even if the stairs are broken, you can jump over it because you know yourself. Now, what are your professional benefits? Along with this work-life integration, when you make your invisible visible, you know how to negotiate your worth for that promotion, that raise, that increased responsibility, that team leadership, whatever it is. You know the value you're bringing in, and you know what that's worth, and you can negotiate for it. Now, the specific negotiation skills and tactics, that's beyond the scope of today. But that's the benefit you get from starting this whole person leadership development journey. You can identify your opportunities. You can identify opportunities that you previously, again, thought you weren't good enough for, or that just sounded too scary because you've never done something like that before, right? Because you understand your core competencies, you understand what your transferable skills are. And you understand that things like you being assertive is not, the B word, or you leaning into your feminine leadership or your masculine leadership. It's you being you. Or when you manage relationships, it's not you being feminine, it's you being you. That masculine, feminine label, whatever other people's labels are, they no longer matter because you know who you are. When that happens, imagine how you are presenting yourself to those around you. You will automatically start influencing. You will automatically start inspiring. And people will want you to mentor them to do the same thing. Because oddly, being comfortable in your own skin is a rarity in our spaces these days. Standing in our truth is a rarity in our spaces these days. So when we see people who are doing that effectively, it's like moths to flame. You can't help but feel this magnetic attraction to them of, man, how are they doing it? I want to learn how they're doing it. I want to do that. I want to learn how to do that. And that part's true. You should start magnetically attracting these people, because all of the amazing connections I've made just in the past 8 months, there is no way I would have been able to make these connections or even talk to Catherine about being an ambassador or be on these lists and be able to talk about it like, yeah, you know, it's just something I did. There's more. But what I want to talk about is inclusion. None of that would have happened. I hated being on video. And I'm on videos like 5 times a week now. And then why is this important for your brand? Think about your reputation. Think about the trust you're building. The knowledge, the know, like, and trust factor that you're building to increase engagements, to look for new markets, to increase loyalty, whether it's to your personal brand, your organization, and of course, because with increased impact and leadership opportunities, you're going to have increased income, right? So these are kind of like the obvious ones. I don't want to spend too much time on these. Now, very quickly, what do you have to make visible for yourself to go on this journey? Very first thing. Now, these pillars that you're seeing here are in the guide that you're going to see on the next slide. If you text the number, you're going to get the guide. But these 5 things are the things that you have to make visible. 1, your mental well-being and stability. How are you really doing? What triggers you? Why? How? Then you have to look at your energy balance. What are you spending too much time on that you shouldn't be? And are you doing that because you feel obligated or because you feel a sense of responsibility? How could that energy, that time be spent better? Then it gets into mindset of what can you learn from that moment? Then once you have these 3 pillars set, your presence, your leadership presence, how you show up as a leader changes. Now, keep in mind, leadership presence is very different from leadership skills. You can have all the skills in the world, but if you don't actually show up, with these skills in your tool belt and showing up as using them for good impact, then your impact won't grow. So your presence, your leadership presence is what makes your impact grow. And then finally, again, the impact of your actions. How can you take bold, inclusive actions to amplify your impact? So how do you go about this? This is where I tell you. Text Inner Fire to 411321, and it's going to ask you for your email address. Once you do that, it is going to send you this entire framework and guide that we're talking about. It's just a 5-page PDF. You may have to check your spam or promos folders, but that's what it is. But here's the steps, really. And you like how my logo is also there because that's what it means. Step number 1, taking control of your well-being. Understanding that you are personally responsible and accountable for you to be well. And this does not mean mental health in the terms of the diagnostic aspects of it. Think about the word well-being, being well, right? What does that being mean? So you have to understand that this is on your control. You have to take accountability for whatever you can do. I'm not asking you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That is insulting. Taking control of your well-being includes, if you need help, if you need support, asking for it, seeking it, so that you can start off mentally well, because that is going to determine everything else. Think about it, right? Think about when you've been when you woke up and you felt like complete garbage for whatever reason. Maybe you're hungover, or maybe you just ate too much, maybe you just worked too hard, whatever it is, right? What you think you're capable of in those moments versus what you think you're capable of when you wake up well rested and refreshed and sure of yourself. Those possibilities completely change. Your potential completely changes for that day. Your energy completely changes. So your well-being is your key to everything. Then you establish your whole person identity, going through those 7 layers. That's step 2. Step 3, your core values for growth. Mine are mental well-being, authenticity, interconnectedness, and intentional inclusion. Every single thing I do is about those 4 things, because that's what I want to put forth in the world. And because of those 4 things, I know my singular purpose. Whole person leadership development. I'm on a mission to transform 10,000 historically marginalized group members, whether they're women, BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, or whatever, in the next 2 years. And that mission came out of my core values. That singular purpose came out of there. Based on that, your strategic vision, and then your actionable, habitable goals and benchmarks. Those are, again, inevitable. And then how do you leverage your enhanced visibility? Take a look at this graphic you see in front of you. And, on the one side, you see the individual. On the other side, you see the organization. They're actually the same, right? Because every organization is an aggregation of all of the people in it. And every person has well-being, identity, values, purpose, vision, and goals. Just like that, every organization has its organizational health, its organizational identity that it puts forth in its branding, its organizational values, its purpose, why it even exists, its vision, and its business goals. So when you figure out your individual aspect of it, that's when you'll be able to identify. So you'll be able to see the whole organization, whatever company you're working for, see it as a living, breathing entity, just like yourself, and boom, that alignment will automatically start coming up to where you can have that maximum impact. And again, this whole thing could be a whole talk on its own, just this one slide, so I won't get into that. But finally, how can I help support you? First of all, I'm going to say thank you for listening to all of this. And I do have upcoming trainings about all of these. And like I was telling Catherine before we started, part of the reason I'm doing these upcoming trainings is so that we can create groups of them, so that when it comes down to how much every person has to pay, the cost comes down. So that I can still pay my bills, we can create a community, and we can have that maximum impact. That's one way that we can work together. Or another way, if you want one-on-one time with me, is let's schedule a discovery call and see what your needs are and go from there. Because I do offer group programs on everything we've talked about today. I do offer individual programs, trainings. There's a whole bunch of things I do with this. And it all boils down to this presentation you saw. Everything I do. So that's about it for me. Thank you so much. And please let me know if you have questions.
EJ, thank you so much for this. I was wondering if we could go to the previous slide, actually, on there, because I think that one is a good one. Maybe kind of end on that one or the one before that. We can pull that back up.
Yeah, let me,
and I also did my text to receive my guide, my framework guide. So
awesome.
Also, I think I'm going to say thank you again. And I think I'll end the recording here too, so we can have a few minutes of discussion before the end of our hour here. So officially, I want to say thank you for your presentation today and for telling us more about what you do. And again, all the information is going to be shared in the follow-up email, how to stay connected with both AJ and Let's Detroit.
All right, so